At last. Yeah, well, they were late with the milking too, so come. I thought a nice story for you now. You'll get a dop for this cold. Oh, it was a cold night on which we drove with Herdecker in his Cape cart to Zeerust. Now, I sat in front next to Gert, who was driving. In the back seat were the Predikant, the Reverend Vermoeten, and his Ouderling Isaac Erasmus, who were on their way to Pretoria for the meeting of the synod of the Dutch Reformed Church there. The Predikant was lean and hawk-faced. The Ouderling was fat and had broad shoulders. Gert Becker and I did not speak. We had been transport drivers together in our time, and we had learned that when it is two men alone, traveling over a long distance, it is best to use few words, and those well chosen. Two men alone in each other's company understand each other better the less they speak. The horses kept up a good steady trot. The lantern swinging from side to side with the jogging in the cart lit up stray patches of the uneven road and made bulky shadows rise up among the thorn trees. In the back seat, the Predikant and the Ouderling were discussing theology. "You have never seen such a lot of brand sick sheep in your life," the Predikant was saying, "as what Chris Haasbroek brought along to the kerk bazaar for dankoffering." We then came to a stony part of the road, and I couldn't hear the Ouderling's reply. But afterwards, above the rattle of the cartwheels, I caught other snatches of God-fearing conversation to do with the raising of pew rentals. From there, the Predikant started discussing the proselytizing activities being carried on among the local Baptistes by the Catholic mission station at Vleisfontein. The Reverend Vermoeten was very eloquent when it came to denouncing the heresies of Catholicism. Yeah, and he spoke loud too, so that we two on the front seat could hear him. And I know that Gert Becker and I felt very good then, deep inside us, to think that we were Protestants. The coldness of the night and the pale flickering of the lantern light among the thorn trees gave an added solemnity to the Predikant's words. I felt it might perhaps be all right to be a Catholic. If you were walking on a Zeerust sidewalk in broad daylight, say. When it was a different matter. To be traveling through the middle of the bush on a cold, dark night with only a swinging lantern fastened to the side of a Cape cart with baling wire. If that lantern went out suddenly, and you were left in the loneliest part of the bush striking matches, then it must be a very frightening thing to be a Catholic, I thought. This led me to think of Piet Riley and his family, who were Afrikaners like you and me. Except they were Catholics. Piet Riley even brought out his vote for General Lemmer in the last Volksraad election, which made us think that it might be unlucky for our candidate. But General Lemmer said, no, he didn't get how many Catholics voted for him. A Catholic's vote was naturally not as good as a Dopper's, he said. But the little cross that had to be made behind the candidate's name would cast out all the evil that was, of course, otherwise lurking in a Catholic's ballot paper, he said. Yeah, General Lemmer must have been right because he got elected that time. While I was thinking along those lines, it suddenly struck me that Piet Riley was now living on a farm about 6 miles on the Bushveld side of Shefton's Neck, and that we would be passing his homestead quite near the road shortly before daybreak. It was comforting to think that we would have the Predikant and the Ouderling in the back seat with us when we passed the farmhouse of Piet Riley, a Catholic in the dark. I tried to hear what the Predikant was saying to the Ouderling in the back seat, but the Predikant was once more dealing with an abstruse point of religion, and had lowered his voice accordingly. I could catch only fragments of the Ouderling's reply. Yes, Dominee, you are quite right. The next time he tries to overlook your son for the job of anthrax inspector, you must make it quite clear to the chairman of the board that you have all that information about his private life. I realized then that you could gain much useful guidance for your everyday problems in the conversation of holy men. The night grew colder and darker. The palm of my hand pressed tighter on the bowl of my pipe was the only part of me that felt warm. My teeth began to chatter, and I wished that the next time we stopped the car to let the horses blow, we could light a fire and boil some coffee. But I knew there was no more coffee left in the box under the back seat. Nou ja. While I sat silent on the Cape Cod next to Gert Becker, I continued to think of Piet Riley and his wife and children. Of course, I mean, with Piet I could understand that he himself had merely kept up the religion, if you could call what the Catholics believe in a religion, that he inherited from his father and his grandfather. But there was Piet Riley's wife, Gertruida now. She had been brought up a respectable Dopper girl. She was one of the Droogedaalbekkers. It was, in fact, distantly related to Gert Becker sitting on the Cape Cod next to me. Now there is something for you to ponder about. I thought to myself with the cold, every minute trying to find new places in my skin through which to strike at my bones. The moment Gertruida met Piet Riley, she forgot all about the sacred truth she had learned at her mother's knees. And on the day she got married, she was saying prayers to the Virgin Mary on a string of beads, and was wearing a silver cross at her throat. At her throat. It was as soft and as white as the roses she held pressed up against her. Here was now a sweet Dopper girl turned papist. Ek weet onverraad daar nie meer nie. As I have said now, I knew that there was no more coffee left in the box under the back seat. But I did know that under the front seat there was a full bottle of raw peach brandy. In fact, I could see the neck of the bottle protruding from between Gert Becker's ankles. And I also knew from the years of transport riding that we had done together that Gert Becker had already over many miles of road been thinking how we could get the cork off that bottle without the Predikant and the Ouderling shaking their heads reprovingly. And the way he managed it in the end was, I thought, highly intelligent. For when next we stopped the cart, he alighted beside the road and held up that bottle to our full view. There is brandy in this bottle, Dominee, Gert Becker said to the Predikant, that I keep for the sake of the horses on cold nights like now. It is an old Mariko remedy, for when the horses are in danger of getting the floater, I take a few mouthfuls of the brandy, which I then blow into the nostrils of the horses. And they don't feel the cold so much after that. The brandy revives them. Gert commenced to blow brandy into the nostrils of the near side horse. And then he beckoned to me, and I also alighted, and when I stood next to him, taking turns with him in blowing brandy into the eyes and nostrils of the offside horse. We did this several times. The Predikant asked various questions to show how interested he was in this old-fashioned method of overcoming fatigue in draft animals. But what he said at the next stop made me perceive that he was more than a match for a dozen men like Herr Becker in point of astuteness. From when next we stopped the cart, the Predikant held up his hand. "Don't you and your friend trouble to get off this time," he said, just as Gert was reaching for the bottle of peach brandy. "The Ouderling and I have decided to take turns with you in blowing brandy into the horses' faces. We don't want to put all the hard work onto your shoulders." We made several morals after that, with the result that daybreak found us still a long way from Shefton's Neck. In the early dawn we saw the thatched roof of Pitt Riley's homestead through the thorn tree some distance from the road. Now, when the Predikant suggested that we call at the homestead for coffee, we explained to him that the Rileys were Catholics. "But isn't Pitt Riley's wife a relative of yours?" the Predikant asked of Gert Becker. "Isn't she your second cousin or something?" "They're Catholics," Gert replied. "Coffee?" the Predikant insisted. "Catholics," Gert repeated stolidly. Yeah, the upshot was, naturally enough, that shortly afterwards we outspanned in front of the Riley homestead. Well, you see, that was the sort of man the Predikant was in an argument, especially about coffee. "Yeah, the coffee will be ready soon," the Predikant said as we walked up towards the front door. "There is smoke coming out of the chimney." Almost before we had stopped knocking, Gertruida Riley had opened both the top and bottom doors. She started slightly when she saw standing in front of her a minister of the Dutch Reformed Church. When she stepped forward to kiss her cousin Gert Becker, I saw him turn away sadly, and I realized something of the shame she had brought in her whole family through her marriage to a Catholic. Yeah. You looked startled when you saw me, Gertruida, the Predikant said, calling her by her first name as though she was still a member of his congregation. Yes, I was surprised, Gertruida answered. "I suppose it was a Catholic priest who wanted to come to your front door, eh?" Gert Becker said sarcastically, and yet there was a tone in his voice that was not altogether unfriendly. "Indeed, I was expecting a Catholic priest," Gertruida said, leading us into the voorkamer. "But if the Lord sent the Dominee and his Ouderling instead, I'm sure it will be well also." It was only then, when she explained to us what had happened, that we understood why Gertruida had looked so agitated. Her 8-year-old daughter had been bitten by a snake. They couldn't tell from the fang marks whether it was a buckhop or a rinkhouse. And so Pitt Riley had gone off in his mule car to Vleesfontein, the Catholic mission station, for a priest. And they had cut open and cauterized the wound and had applied the red permanganate. The rest was a matter for God. And that was why, when she saw the Predikant and the Ouderling at her front door, Gertruida believed that the Lord had sent them. I was glad that Herr Becker did not at that moment think of mentioning that we'd really come for coffee. "Certainly I will pray for your little girl's recovery," the Predikant said. "Take me to her." Gertruida hesitated. Will you pray for her the Catholic way, Dominee?" she asked. Now it was the Predikant's turn to draw back. "But Gertruida, I myself confirmed in the Engelgereformeerde Kerk in Zeerust. How can you now ask such a thing of me? Did you not learn in your catechism that the Romish ritual is a mockery of the Holy Ghost?" "I married Pitt Riley," Gertruida answered simply, "and his faith is my faith. Pitt has been very good to me, Father, and I love him." We noticed Gertruida called the Predikant Father and not Dominee now. During the silence that followed, I glanced at the candle burning before an image of the Mother Mary in a corner of the voorkamer. I looked away quickly from that unrighteousness. The predikant's next words took us by complete surprise. Have you some sort of a prayer book that sets out the Catholic form for praying for the sick? I will fetch one from the other room, Gepreda said. When she had left the room, the predikant tried to set our minds at ease. I am only doing this to help a mother in distress, he explained to the Ouderling. It is something the Lord will understand. Gepreda was brought up a Dopper girl, and in some ways she is still one of us. She does not realize that I have no authority to conduct this Catholic service for the sick. The Ouderling was about to say something, but at that moment Gepreda came back with a little black book that you could almost have taken for a Dutch Reformed Church psalmbook. Only I knew that what was printed inside was as iniquitous as that candle burning in the corner. My little girl is in the other room, Gepreda said, starting towards the bedroom door. The predikant followed her. But before entering the bedroom, he turned and faced the Ouderling. Will you enter with me, Brother Erasmus? The Ouderling did not reply. The veins stood out on his forehead. From his face you could tell the great conflict that went on inside of him. For what seemed like a very long time, he stood quite motionless, and then he stooped down to the wristbank for his hat, which he did not need, and walked after the predikant into the bedroom.